Sometimes, as songs age, they begin to take on new meanings or become even more profound. Nutshell is one of these songs. Released by Alice in Chains on the 1994 EP Jar of Flies, Nutshell really is just a very, very special song. Essentially consisting of one chord progression, two verses, two wordless choruses, and one guitar solo. It is beautifully simple, heartbreakingly gorgeous, lush, and somber all at the same time. Nutshell encompasses many different emotions, feelings, and experiences, and packages them in well, a nutshell. In 2013, Nutshell was ranked as the 9th saddest song of all time by Rolling Stone magazine. And honestly, I bet if that ranking was done again here in 2024, that ranking would be even higher. Despite never being released officially as a single or having any radio play at all, Nutshell has become one of Alice in Chains' most popular songs. And I mean, it is easy to see, or I guess hear why. The music is extremely somber and beautiful, extremely well produced with every instrument contributing exactly what the song needs and nothing more. A masterful guitar solo by Jerry Cantrell, extremely interesting and melodically unique bass playing by Mike Inez, fantastic and subtle drumming by Sean Kinney, and of course the haunting vocal performance of the great Lane Staley. Rest in peace. This is all complemented by two short stanzas of beautiful poetry, and never mind an incredibly legendary live performance of the song on the MTV Unplugged album. This is the genius of Nutshell. To any non-native English speakers who may not be familiar with English idioms, the phrase in a nutshell means to summarize a large concept in as few words as possible, and this is exactly what the song Nutshell does. I said this many times in these deep dives, but the best art is the art in which everyone who looks at it or hears it finds their own meaning. Everyone has their own opinion of what the Mona Lisa is smiling at, for example. This is the genius of Nutshell. The two short stanzas of poetry feature lines which relate universally to the human experience. Everyone can listen to the song and be reminded of their own lives and poignant moments in it and find their own meaning within them. The lines hit especially hard with the knowledge that the singer of these lines no longer walks this earth. So, in this deep dive, different from others, which you can find in the playlist here, I will tell you what the song means to me, but I also want you to tell me what the song means to you, so leave that down in the comments. I don't mind reading some essays, so feel free to write as long as you want. In this deep dive, I'll be transcribing the song to a piano so we can hear the chords and intervals and melodies more clearly, and to do that I had to modify and correct a MIDI file I found online. I also added the vocal lines to this MIDI file. So I'll leave a link to the download of this MIDI file in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. If you like this type of content, remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you aren't already. If you like my work, consider buying me a coffee. And yeah, so without further ado, let us first start off with the musical construction of the song Nutshell. The album Jar of Flies was recorded in Seattle at London Bridge Studios in September of 1993. According to UltimateGuitar.com, the guitars used on the studio recording were a Guild JF55 acoustic guitar, which was borrowed from Mike Inez. This guitar can also be seen in the MTV Unplugged version, and for the lead parts, Jerry Cantrell used one of his G&L Rampages, which has an interesting sticker on it. This is equipped with a Seymour Duncan SH4 pickup, and according to all the information from forums I could find online, the lead tones were achieved using an Ibanez Tube Screamer and a Fender Twin Reverb amp. Although I was not able to find an original source for this, so take this with a grain of salt. Either way, the lead sounds great. The guitars were of course tuned down a half step to E standard as well, which is standard for Alice in Chains. Also, according to UltimateGuitar.com, Mike Inez played a Warwick Streamer 4-string bass on this song. You can hear him playing it with a pick as well. As for amps, I couldn't find any reliable information or consensus about it, what effects or whatever was on the amp on the album, but in the MTV Unplugged version, he used an Alvarez 4070 electric acoustic bass, which had a special message for a certain band who was in attendance at the show written on it. The drums on the song are very subtle, and drummer Sean Kinney would use brushes to give a much softer feel. Brushes, while not often found in rock music, work well in acoustic setting, as the brushes are able to give more subtle rhythms without the use of cymbals. By scraping the brush along the coated snare drum head, it creates a little whoosh sound, I suppose you could call it. And I'm not really sure what drums he would have used, but on the MTV the unplugged version, we can see he's using a DW kit. I assume would be a DW custom kit. The song is performed in the key of D sharp minor, which of course is due to the fact being 2 down to half step on their guitars. The song begins with the lone acoustic guitar playing the following chords: B add 9, D sharp minor 7, and F sharp major, C sharp major, and every fourth time the progression plays, Jerry Cantrell throws in a B major 7 chord just to spice things up. A very beautiful and somber chord progression, which is strummed and played very beautifully. Here is the basic chord progression laid out in a 4-bar pattern on the piano with no strumming. On the B add 9 chord, Jerry Cantrell also plays around with moving the D sharp note to a C sharp and then hammering back on the D sharp right after. This essentially turns the B add 9 chord into a B sus2 temporarily before he goes back to the major third of the chord, which is the D sharp. Very cool little chord play, and it kind of gives a little bit more of a melodic movement to the chord progression as it's strummed. Besides the B sus2 played temporarily in the B major 7, the C sharp, which is played on the 3rd fret of the B string, drones out through most of this song. This drone note gives something to hold on to, a melodic constant throughout the song, if you will. The song starts halfway through the last bar, which is an interesting choice. It gives a feeling that we are joining something that is already in progress. This will be relevant later on when we get to the lyrics. Mike Inez joins in with his fantastic bass playing on the 3rd measure. The bass sounds very bright. It almost sounds like there's several effects going on the bass, but I'm not exactly too sure here. He starts with a little fill before landing on the low D sharp of the D sharp minor 7 chord. Interestingly enough, when the pattern moves to the B add 9 chord, instead of playing the root note of this chord, which would be B, instead he plays the 5th of the chord, which is the F sharp. Playing the 5th instead of the root note in the bass kind of gives a sort of incomplete feel to this chord. It doesn't really change how the chord relates to the rest of the song, it just sort of changes like the feel of the chord, if you know what I mean. With the B in the bass would sound like this. And the chord, which is played in the song with the bass on F sharp, sounds like this. Also, going from the low D sharp to this F sharp is a jump of over an octave. It's a very unique choice that you almost never see in bass playing. It gives a lot of movement to the song where there isn't so much going on chord-wise on the guitar, but the bass is sort of dancing all over the fretboard, all over the notes, over these octaves. It's a very cool bass line, and it really gives a lot of movement to the song. Just some fantastic work by Mike Inez here. As the song continues, Mike Inez continues this pattern. He also plays some cool little fills, which outline the other chords being played in the transition between the patterns. The bass playing, as is often in a lot of Alice in Chains songs, is really what is driving the melody. For another example, see the song Rooster. Rather than just simply outlining the chords being played, the bass is allowed to move and explore other tonal options, resulting in a bass line that carries the song and adds some interesting flavors to the chords being played. Great stuff. Here is the basic chord progression with bass played on the piano. This in the studio recording is really quite gorgeous. Both the guitar and bass sounds complement each other so well and are mixed perfectly. It is really a very somber and heartbreaking chord progression. The brush snare and kick drums come in about half a bar before the vocals do. This first verse is almost sprung upon us. The only warning of it coming is the drums coming in just shortly before. We'll get to the lyrics shortly here, as I'm going to look at the whole song's lyrics at the same time. Treat them as one poem rather than the way I normally do these by going through the song sort of line by line here. But regardless, here is the melody that Lane sings, played out on piano, with the bass notes played underneath. I really love the play between the vocals and the bass here. They trade off movement, with Lane holding notes while Mike Ina's bass parts move around the fretboard, and then they match the movement together. Great stuff. It really sounds fantastic together. It was said that the band would write the music and then Lane would go off and add the vocals after. This really shows us what a great ear for music he has, to be able to hear something like that and complement it perfectly, matching his movement in some parts while allowing the bass to breathe in other parts. Truly fantastic. Here's the bass with the vocals and chords all played together on piano. The vocal melody that Lane sings is a very interesting one. The first two lines start on the 9th of the B add 9 chord. As he sings the word we, he bounces around from the major 3rd to the 7th, then landing on the 5th of the chord, which is the F sharp, matching the bass. He then lands on the 5th of the D sharp minor 7 chord, which is A sharp during the word lines. This is contrasted in the second line, which is similar in melody, but a little bit different. This one sees Lane giving us a bluesy note in the form of a minor 7 interval on the B add 9 chord here. Here is this beautiful chord played together on piano. He then lands again on F sharp before descending it down again to the major 3rd of the B add 9, which is D sharp, ending this phrase on the word time by landing again on the D sharp, this time under the D sharp minor chord, the root note of this chord, giving the word some very heavy gravity impact.
Face the path of time.
This is contrasted from the previous line, which he landed on the 5th of the D sharp minor 7 chord.
Chase Miss Pretty Lies.
Very interesting distinction and note choice here that kind of gives some resolution and finality to that word time at the end here. Very, very cool. And then on the next line, he says, and yet I find we get this beautiful melody, which I've simplified and played over top of the chords. Just absolutely gorgeous. Here Lane sings the 9th, 7th, 6th, and 5th of the B add 9 chord before again landing on the 5th of the D sharp minor 7 chord. The line No One to Cry To is almost the exact same as the We Face the Path of Time line as well, with that beautiful minor 7 chord again with it. He lands the word home again on the tonic root note of D sharp under the D sharp minor 7 chord. A Very nice touch to give a resolution to these lines. Truly gorgeous vocal lines here that really complement the lyrics extremely well. The vocal melody is the same in the second verse as well, just with different lyrics. Now the chorus of the song begins with a small electric lead pattern that is played by Jerry Cantrell. This pattern repeats twice, each time doing the same descending pattern. The first time he ends the pattern A sharp, which adds the major 7th interval to the B add 9 chord played underneath it. Here is that chord. Very beautiful. And then the second pattern lands on the note F, which in the key of D sharp minor would actually be called E sharp, so we don't have 2 E notes. It's all very confusing. Here's a chart. Anyways, just so you can keep in your head, the note E sharp is just the note F. But just due to the fact that in one key you don't ever want to have 2 F notes, in this case we'd have an F and an F sharp, we'll just call that E sharp instead. I know it's all very confusing. Anyways, the E sharp or F note is the suspended second of the D sharp minor chord. So it then turns the chord into D minor 7 add 9 chord. Very cool and a very gorgeous chords that are being used here. Here are these chords played together. Hear all these chords with all the instruments put together. Very, very gorgeous. But wait, when we add the vocals on top, this is where the magic really happens. It is kind of hard to hear in the studio recording, but there is a harmony happening with the oohs. Here are the vocal melodies played on the piano, harmonized in the usual Alice in Chains fashion of fourths, minor thirds, and even a 7th. And first of all, they go right up into Lane's falsetto range, which contrasts the low D sharp he hits in the last line of the verse. He goes from that low D sharp up into his falsetto range, making the oohs sound even more gorgeous and effervescent. And here they are with the bass line and Jerry's lead parts. Really, I mean, this is just insanely beautiful and gorgeous, gorgeous songwriting here. Absolutely fantastic. The oohs sound ethereal and heartbroken. They soar above the rest of the music and add such fantastic impact to the song. We don't need any lyrics to hear the pain in Lane's voice here. So to make the chorus easier to understand, I have simplified all the notes and the pattern a little bit and put all the parts together here on piano. Here it is. I mean, it is truly no wonder why the song is one of their most popular ones. Here, I will play it for you once again. We move from the F sharp chord, which has the guitar, lead, and vocals that turns into an F sharp add 9 with a major 6 briefly, and then to just a regular F sharp with a major 6 in the vocals before it all resolves into that absolutely titanic and gorgeous D sharp minor 7 add 9 chord. Such a powerful movement and resolution to that chorus. Oh man, it is just fantastic. I love that. To me, I think that this chorus is one of the most beautiful and haunting in all of music. The contrast from the low D sharp note that Lane ends the verse on, with the tasteful guitar lead coming in before it stops in the major 7th, with the falsetto lyricless oohs that come in on top. Man, just wow, it is so powerful. And then the resolution to the huge D sharp minor 7 add 9 chord is such a fantastic way to resolve the chorus. Just another reason why Alice in Chains is one of the GOAT bands in my opinion. The second verse and chorus essentially just repeat musically, but the second verse has different lyrics. And I also just want to highlight on the last line of the second verse here, on the "if I can't be my own" line, the guitar strumming and bass hold their notes, giving just the vocals and drums the spotlight and all the space they need. Thus, when Lane sings the line, "I'd feel better dead," the bass and guitars come back in. It just feels so heavy and crushing, adding into the drama and heartbreak in the lyrics.
I feel better dead.
Just a fantastic little detail and touch by the band that when you really sit down and break down a song like this, you become to appreciate these little small details and how much weight it adds to the line, "I'd feel better dead." Great stuff. After the second chorus, we get what may be one of Jerry Cantrell's best solos of all time. Incredibly tasteful, he shows considerable restraint in his playing here. He uses little smatterings of delay and reverb to accentuate the sounds. It sounds like it is more like several short lead phrases rather than one continuous solo, as he uses silence very strategically and purposefully to enhance the story that the solo here is trying to tell. And I'm not nearly a good enough guitarist to replicate the solo here, but I mean, just go listen to it for yourself. Take it in and absorb how it ebbs and flows with the song. Notice how in certain sections, the strumming pattern is played much harder and aggressively to match the solo. Truly an incredible piece of work here by Jerry Cantrell. But VARVIS, what does it all mean? Here now, I will give you my interpretation of the song. But like I said, I want to hear yours, so be sure to leave yours down below. There are uncountable ways you can interpret the song and interpret the lyrics, so just leave yours down below. I'll read them all. Firstly, the title of the song, Nutshell. Why would they choose this? Well, to start, if we look at Lane Staley, he had just turned 27 shortly before the song was written in the fall of 1994. The band also recently had a stint of homelessness after returning home after their touring for Dirt. Anyone who has been through the transition from kid or teenager to full-grown adult will understand what I'm trying to say. 27 is right around the age where it is no longer possible to deny your age. You know, right? You are in your late 20s now. That's a fact. So to me, this song is the feeling of the loss of innocence of childhood and the acceptance of adulthood, the eternal battle between the individual. The hollow, bitter feeling that comes with the acceptance of this fact is a real and painful one. You know, you can never get your childhood innocence back. So, in a nutshell to me is about the acceptance of adulthood and all the pain that this experience brings. Now, before you get your pitchforks out and start typing, "No, the song is about X, Y, or Z," you know, just hear me out first. Let us take a look at the lyrics as a short poem here. We chase misprinted lies, we face the path of time, and yet I fight, this battle all alone. No one to cry to, no place to call home. My gift of self is raked, my privacy is raked, and yet I find, repeating in my head, if I can't be my own, I'd feel better dead. So now that we see the lyrics as one unit instead of a disjointed kind of lines of a song, we can now look at the whole song as a unit as well. The song first starts out halfway through measure. While this provides a way to introduce the song and chord progression, it also gives a feeling of joining something that is already in progress, like we are joining someone who is already partway through life. Lane sings the lines, "We chase misprinted lies and facing the path of time." The transition period from teenager to fully formed young adult comes with many realizations. One of those is that a lot of what you were told and led to believe as a child was probably wrong or simply outright lies. This is compounded by the fact that I'm almost certain by your late 20s, most people have felt and are aware of the delicate nature of life. most likely experiencing a loss of a loved one or several, a poignant reminder that they are not immune to the path that time takes as well. This all can be extremely painful, as a lot of things you once believed in were probably fundamental to the way you viewed the world, your teleological beliefs, and even perhaps your belief in the path you have taken in life. Lane's lines that end this verse speak of the realization that ultimately you're the only one who can fight your own battles, and no one is coming to save you when you are a fully grown adult. There is no one to cry to, and no place to call home. I think the latter part of this line was probably due to the stint of homelessness that the band faced briefly, but we can also look at this line as home being more of a metaphorical place. Today, people feel very alienated in their communities and countries. For many reasons which we won't get into here, but essentially a home can be larger than simply a dwelling in which you spend most of your rest time. But a home can also be the metaphorical house in which your beliefs and worldviews are contained, which communities and peoples you belong to, among many other things. The chorus falsetto oohs are to me very similar or akin to a wolf howling or whale calls or whale songs. A lyricless song that other members of the species simply intrinsically know what is meant, especially with the melodic and chordal construction that all the voices and instruments create, as we saw earlier in the video. You know what he's saying, you can feel the pain in his voice. This chorus is made for us to relate to sing along with, to join with him, and to empathize and feel the pain with Lane. You don't even need to speak English at all to know what feelings and emotions Lane and the band are trying to portray here. There's really something intrinsic and instinctual to how we as humans perceive and feel the different vibrations of vocal cords and instruments that we call music that can create such profound feelings inside us. As the second verse begins, Lane uses the word rape, but not in the sexual way. He uses one of the other definitions of the word, which is to seize or take away by force. Quote, "My gift of self is raped," means here that as one ages, your gift of self is forcibly taken away from you. You realize that you aren't an atomized individual, but part of a larger collective of people, a tribe, a city, a nation, and an interconnected member of Earth's biosphere. Privacy being raped here can mean that as you grow older, part of being part of a larger community means that certain aspects of yourself, your privacy, must be shared with the larger society. However, as Lane sings, it is not easy to accept this, as he repeats to himself over and over that if he cannot be his own individual, then he is simply better off dead. It is the eternal battle one must face as they grow older. Two forces are pulling the person. One is the external societal forces which compel an individual through societal pressures and expectations to follow a certain common path, to conform and accept their position as part of a larger whole of a community, another organ in the body of humanity, if you will. The other that is pulling them is the remnants of the inner child and teenage self, whose curiosity and need for independence from their parents leads them to explore the world for themselves. The conflict between these two can be very painful and traumatic, where especially today, suicide rates are higher in young people than ever before. Quote, "I'd feel better dead." Of course, I'm not saying this is the only reason for this phenomenon, as it's an extremely complex issue, but one cannot help but relate to maybe very dark times in one's own life where, quote, "I'd feel better dead" was a very relatable issue. However, as time moves forward, the conflict never really goes away. This painful internal battle will probably always be fought. It is said that the last stage of grief is acceptance. Do you accept this? I mean, do you really have any other choice? One cannot go on simply pretending that they are not part of a larger whole, and I'm sure in your own life you can probably look around and see the lives of those who never really accept this fact, and usually it isn't a very pretty sight. Again, after the line "dead," we move on to the whale song, as I like to call it, or wolf howl chorus, whatever you want to call it. Again, you are invited to feel and sing along with Lane. His pain is your pain, as ultimately we are all part of this larger whole together. A people who are listening and experiencing this song. So thus, then we come to the solo of the song. The climax of the song, this to me is the internal battle raging. The sharp beginnings and endings of some of the solo sections are like the sharp stings of pain and bitter feelings. The held partial chords played under distortion portraying the frustration and anger that can build up from this conflict. The last few lines are disjointed short little runs that seem to lead to nowhere. The solo never seems to resolve itself, it just simply fades away. Which is also similar to how this song ends, in a fade out. The question is never answered. The conflict is never resolved. We seem to leave the world of the song while it is still going on, similar to how the song began. The internal conflict never really ever goes away. It simply fades away with time. You either accept the fact willingly, or time will do it for you. So, in a nutshell, this song to me is about the transition from individual child life and teenager to fully formed adult, whose main existence is the service of the community at large, rather than solely focusing on the individual needs of the self. This can be extremely painful, and, I've gone through this myself as I've just turned 29. The sort of realization and acceptance of this fact can be extremely painful, and a grief-filled experience, as essentially all the flame of the individual is snuffed out and absorbed by the much larger fire of society. And do you really have any other choice? I don't really think so. But of course, this is simply my interpretation and the way that I personally relate to the song. Again, you might personally relate to the song in a much different way, and I would love to hear that. So please leave it down in the comments. So that was Nutshell, one of the most hauntingly beautiful songs ever made. The lore of this song is made even stronger by the legendary performance of the song live on the famous MTV Unplugged album that they did, where Lane is almost looking like a ghost, wearing his sunglasses, looking very disheveled, extremely skinny from years of drug abuse. It's a really very poignant image where he just strolls onto stage and immediately sits down and just nails the song completely. Absolutely legendary performance, and Lane is one of the greatest singers of our entire era for sure. If you go look at the comments on the video on YouTube of it, they're very telling. One of my favorites on this video is, quote, "This is like watching someone sing at their own funeral." End quote. Of course, my interpretation I just gave you is one of many. In the comments, you can begin to see how others relate to the song. Drug addiction, self-harm, familial abuse, loss of loved ones, and the list goes on and on. Truly, to me, this is what makes this song so genius. If so many people can relate to this song in so many different ways, it must touch the human soul in a very profound and deep way. The way the song is constructed musically through the chords and intervals and different melodies that are all sung to create these deep and gorgeous and lush different chords and progressions and resolutions. It's just fantastic. The solo is amazing, and while it doesn't resolve anything, it leaves us with more questions and is a very emotional experience to listen to. I hope in this video with the breakdown of some of the music theory, you can hopefully begin to see why it does make people feel this way, why it does touch people in such profound ways. But of course, you cannot recreate, such magic on your own. You need the combined abilities, story, and lore of this band and its members to create such an aura around the song. Whether it be Lane singing and his lyrics, or just the music itself. There really is something very, very, very special about the song Nutshell, and I can only assume its legendary status will grow with time as more and more people hear and relate to the song. That was the Nutshell Deep Dive. So, thanks for watching, everyone. I appreciate every single one of you who comes and listens to me ramble on about my favorite songs. I love Alice in Chains so much, so if you want to see more breakdowns of their songs, let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, leave a like, consider buying me a coffee if you like my work, remember to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you soon in the next video in this series. Cheers, everyone.